Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. No, it's Wednesday. It's May the 1st. I just read the 1st and thought Monday. Yeah, sorry, we had some issues getting on Rumble. You guys should be rocking and rolling over there now, and we are kicking it live. It is 0830 here in Texas, America. That means it's 0930 in wherever, the East Coast, where they are having riots and chaos, where campuses are being overtaken. If you guys want to join us over on Rumble, you can do so. And as you do so, you'll be able to like this video. You'll be able to subscribe. You'll be able to hit the notification key, and you can follow the channel. If you guys want to support the channel, if you want to get subscribed to the channel, that's what Rumble calls it when you're a financial supporter. You can throw $5 behind our name. It goes directly to us, and you can do so by doing this. I think I got a little thing. If you were to go on a browser, or if you do it either on your phone or on your PC, you'll see this once you've got the follow and then the subscribe. That's how it works. All right, folks. We're getting rocky and starting right away because there's an awful lot of stupidity. This is one of the weirdest Wednesdays to get started with. Some of you may have been tracking that we've had nothing but insanity on college campuses. There are some excuses for why that's happening. I don't think they make a lot of sense. We want to get into that. And why are they always queer, lesbian dance theory majors? Or lesbian Marxist comparative literature studies PhD students? Why are these people the ones speaking for the youth? We're going to kind of dig a little bit into that. I also want to touch on a topic that I don't hear discussed very much. I found a scholarly article, go figure, from the University of Virginia, talking about something I always wondered about when I worked for the FBI, and that's the overlap of Citizens United, which is to say that speech and money can be conflated in the American system. We have a free speech right to give money to various causes. But what happens when those causes are terrorist causes? They're currently kind of experiencing that in the college campuses right now. You've got that going on in UCLA. We've got that going on at Virginia Tech, Columbia, etc., University of Texas at Austin, down the street from me. All these areas are now dealing with, sort of legitimate terrorist organizations being supported by money and speech and money. There is a weird overlap there. And I don't think that our case law right now is consistent. It's worth exploring that. I actually had Fox ask me one time if I would come on and talk about the professors at Harvard that were supporting Hamas. It's like, that's not a 3-minute podcast or a 3-minute hit on a Fox News. So we'll talk about that. Government being against our interests by allowing invasions, talking about bringing in people that don't belong in this country. That's already been going on for quite a while. I want to refresh our memories as they talk about it again, as the Biden administration is discussing it. Cries of fake news plus Biden propaganda is more embarrassing than doing porn. It's a weird day. It's a weird Wednesday. We're going to get launched right into it. But first, before we get started, let's say thanks to my buddies over at Patriot Coolers. You guys know how to reach them. We had an outstanding, I'm going to read it tomorrow, actually. We had an outstanding review come in from one of y'all on Twitter. John told me that he ordered a cooler. It came in damaged, and Patriot Coolers offered to make it right by giving him a brand new one and letting him keep the old one, even though there was nothing physically wrong with it. And then the second piece of it was that he said that they offered him 50% refund on his whole product. You guys can get your own Patriot Cooler, a 50 quart, or hard-sided, soft-sided, a tumbler, something like this, my 19-ounce. You can get it customized now with suspendable stuff by using promo code Kyle at patriotcoolers.com. Again, promo code KYLE, patriotcoolers.com. Should we launch into this stuff? Let's get started. So sometimes I see some of these weird messages that you guys have. Someone just said the music is not going away, so it's hard to hear. Sounds like you probably have 2 browser windows open. Do you know what music is not going away in my head right now? For some reason, the Axel Foley theme. I can't get it out of my head. It's been going on for days. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear Axel Foley in my head, but I do. That's the theme to Beverly Hills Cop by Harold Faltermeyer. Don't ask me why I know that either, but I do. All right, we're going to get into a story that I think is a little bit encouraging. We don't always start off with encouraging news, so we might as well. It's the New York Times reporting. This Arizona rancher, a guy by the name of George Allen Kelly, who was accused of murdering an unarmed migrant. Of course, they have to say that. That's to say a random person on his property. He has a 170-acre property down in Keno Springs, Arizona, right on the Mexican border. And some dude was creeping across his property, and he ended up shooting him and killing him. The jurors were unable to reach a unanimous verdict. There was a mistrial declared last week. The prosecutors in Arizona decided that there is no space for them to retry this. There is no need and there is no desire coming from the public. So we've got a little take of him walking away from the courthouse. This is not the kind of man that we see being charged with murder in this country. But it's kind of a microcosm for just people who wanted to be left alone, who are out there doing their own thing, defending their family. By the way, this man is 75 years old. So he's not exactly like hunting down and looking for trouble. He's a guy that would expect that his sovereign property and that his rights would be obeyed in Arizona, all places, kind of the Cowboy West out there, if you guys have ever spent any time. And a 48-year-old man that had no business being on his property looks like a threat, even at distance. And you don't have to be right. You don't have to have somebody be armed on your property. You have to be reasonable, and you have to be able to articulate a threat. Turns out the jurors were unable to come to a conclusion on whether or not the state's case made sense. I think this is an overall good. You'll hear that there are people in the background of this video that are protesting him as he walks out of the courtroom. And it's not like he's victorious or celebrating what happened. I'm sure that this will probably haunt him to the end of his days. It's not something that I think that he will be able to handle lightly. It doesn't seem like he's walking away unscathed. He looks bowed and broken from 2 things. Number 1, the state coming after him for something that should have been his right to do, defend himself and his property and his wife. And then, of course, the fact that they came after him, but then he's been sort of not acquitted. They just dropped the prosecution because they couldn't get it done. Anyway, it's worth watching videos of people like this and see there's no triumph in this. It's the same as police officers that kill people. They don't go back home generally and high five. They generally have to go to therapy. I'm sure this man probably needs that too. Let's take a look.
The nightmare's over.
If you can confess and you can bring what is right,
You say
then
something
there
to
will be no
Ultima's
more
family?
murders like these.
They have my sympathy, my sincere sympathy.
Floodgates for many more murders.
Do you worry about the next few months or years where you live, people showing up or anything like that, with people protesting like this behind you?
God will look after me, like He always has. I speak with Ultima's family and they think.
Yeah, that's not a triumphant man there. God will look after me like He always has. The concern that the reporter was asking him was, are you worried about people coming and protesting at your house? That's a real time. Like, there are people that will make it their business to come after folks simply because they've got the time on their hands. That's kind of what we're seeing in Colombia. Like, people that are professional agitators are stepping out into the public space. And isn't it interesting? We're going to get to them in a second, but isn't it interesting that all these causes tend to align? It's always against law and order, and they always kind of have this overlap. The Free Palestine people seem to be the same folks as the BLM people, seem to be the same folks as the Antifa people, seem to be the same people that are very upset about George Floyd but wouldn't want to live in the same neighborhood as a George Floyd, right? And it always comes back to Marxism, which is the answer that they always have, that there's some sort of systemic injustice in the American system, even though they benefit from it, even though they're able to have time and leisure and that they have a safe society enough to be able to go out and do all this lunatic protesting, which we have to be behind their right to do so right up until the point when they want to break the law. And I don't know, maybe this guy's previous behavior should be a warning to those that would want to go and hassle him. He already shot one person invading his property. And the state and the area that he was being tried in didn't really see a way to get through to the shadow of a doubt situation and put him in jail. At 74, 75 years old, you want to go mess with this dude? Hopefully they leave him alone. Like I said, you can see by his body posture, his shoulders are hunched over. It doesn't look like a man who's thrilled about the actions that he had to take, but he did, and he defended himself, and it's a sad thing. Matt Walsh has a neat opinion piece that's over at Daily Wire right now. I want to kind of read some of that and kind of reflect on it. It says that this article is entitled, it's an opinion piece, so it's an editorial. The government floods the country with criminals and then punish you if you defend yourself against them. Again, written by Matt Walsh of the Matt Walsh Show. Officials in Arizona decided to make an example of this man, George Allen Kelly. But they didn't bother building a real case. I think that's really the thing. They thought that basically saying, look what he's done. How dare he? Guns are bad. This man is bad. And his actions speak for themselves. But that's not the way that it works in our system. You have to meet the statutory minimums. You have to be able to explain how his actions were unreasonable and were not falling within the self-defense realm. So this is kind of how he says. On Monday, prosecutors in Arizona decided not to retry George Allen Kelly after his prosecution resulted in a hung jury last week. Kelly, as you may remember, is the Arizona rancher accused of shooting and killing a Mexican national who was illegally trespassing on his property. This guy had been previously caught in the United States several times, and he'd been deported as recently as 2016. This is a repeat offender in this case. As this trial got underway, Matt Walsh is saying he defended Kelly based on a pretty simple principle, which is that American citizens have a right to defend their property, their families, and themselves. That should be all we need to know about this case. Those men had no right to be on his property. It doesn't mean that you can generally kill people who are on your property. But the fact that they charged him and they didn't show malice or intent that he was going out there specifically, all he had to do is make a reasonable argument that he was acting in self-defense. It's wild to think that a man in his 70s who has 75 years of not killing people on his property and suddenly chose to do so, it's wild to think that that man would be a target of the state. And so this title that the government is basically allowing criminals in, and in this case, this man was a criminal. He had already broken the law in the United States and entered illegally multiple times. Why is the government raising its specter? We are supposed to be able to defend the rights of all people, including those who are the least of us. It's very important. And yet, are we really supposed to be pushing the power of the government to go after those who don't pay taxes here, that have honestly no right to the protections of our government? This man at 75 years old has probably paid taxes for a long time. He's got 175 acres of land. That makes him a net positive, probably contributor to the United States, both to the state and to the federal government when it comes to financial. And you're going to go after this man with everything you got, trying to put him in jail for the rest of his life, because that's what would happen. It's horrific to think about. That's what that word, I've said it before. I wrote an article, or I wrote a chapter actually for a Catholic Vote book, and it was published in the Federalist the other day. And the first word is betrayal. It's the sense that people who are in federal service have betrayal. They signed up to do something. They're not allowed to do it. Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protections. Betrayal is the word. They signed up to do one mission, and they have no ability to do so. They are being stopped. Our military, it's betrayal. They signed up for the mission of serving and protecting the United States, defending the Constitution against the foreign and the domestic enemies, but they are not allowed to do that. They're being pushed into ideological areas. I saw this video of a female recruit to special operations for the Air Force. And she's going through pre-dive training, which I went through. And it's rigorous. And there's nothing more sort of horrific than this piece that's referred to as flooded mask flutter kicks. What they do is they take a high volume dive mask. That's those Jacques Cousteau sort of, oval shaped masks. They're these big 1950 style dive masks. And the reason what they have is they're high volume. They've got a lot of room for water. It takes about a cup and a half of water to fill it up. And they fill it up with a hose, put that sucker on your face. You're laying back with your butt underneath you. You got your feet or your hands underneath your butt. Your head is off the deck. Your shoulders are off the deck. Your toes are off the deck. Your knees are off the deck, and they're kicking with heavy plastic, what they call jet fins. And this girl's trying to do that. And then the next thing they usually do is they put a hose on your face. So you're catching water running over your nose and into your mouth. She gets up and she's puking. Like, Why is she in there? Did I see guys give up in that? Sure. Most of them got sorted out right away. Why did she make the video? Maybe the Air Force Special Operations guys were trying to show something. Some people don't belong in this training because the net gain that they would have doesn't add anything to the unit cohesion. It doesn't add anything to the mission set. So if you're trying to push social agendas instead of trying to do the most lethal and most capable force, you're betraying our troops. Our troops showed up to do something hard, voluntarily. There's no reason to put somebody that has no business being there simply because you're trying to move some sort of political agenda. And our troops shouldn't be used that way. In the same way I see these prosecutions. This prosecution here, it's across the board from federal service to military to individual citizens being abused by the government that they fund. That's when the government doesn't serve us. I had this recollection too, because it's bothering me. There's some pushes by the Biden administration to come in and talk about making abortion for all. We'll talk about Kamala going down to Florida in a second. But what about the 10th Amendment? The 10th Amendment was the ultimate compromise that came from the anti-federalist movement. As you guys may recall, in the 1780s, the late 1780s, 87, 88, 89, there's this big debate whether or not they are going to pass the U.S. Constitution as we know it, at least the beginning before all the amendments. And the big compromise was that the Federalists, who wanted a strong enough central government to actually do the job of the central government, and the Anti-Federalists, who said, we can't have a founding document, a rule or law of the land that has the supremacy clause without limiting the power of said government. We can't do it because we just got rid of a king. We don't want that again. And so that's how we got the Bill of Rights. The Federalists didn't want it. And the biggest piece, which is completely ignored, you have the right to go and talk and speak and assemble and all these and petition for the redress of grievances. You don't have the right to go seize buildings, by the way, on college campuses. That's not within those rights. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. But the big compromise was that they said there is a supremacy clause, which says that the federal government will have authority in the areas the federal government is limited to. But they also passed the 10th Amendment. It says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, that's the federal government, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So there are specific carve-outs that the state is not, that the federal government is not allowed to go into. And the states, plural, which is to say all these little federated pieces, they're all supposed to have more power because of the way the Bill of Rights was written, except in the narrow scope of where the U.S. Constitution gave authority to the federal government. Doesn't make any sense because we've completely ignored this 10th final and maybe one of the most important of the amendments to the Bill of Rights. Like the 10th Amendment tells us, and it dates back to December 15th, 1791, all the way to the beginning. There's a lot of authorities that need to stay the hell out of the way. It's bizarre. Then you got this guy. And what's he doing? This is Biden. Hold on. I actually got a great video of Biden. This is the kind of this is the kind of inspirational, let's say, conduct from the Biden administration. They're looking to bring in Palestinians to the United States as refugees, is what they're saying. This is the claim, the Biden administration trying to move them into our space. Again, another betrayal, a massive betrayal. Because these people, one, they're at odds with our actual allies, even though Israel's kind of a frenemy to the U.S. government. There's an awful lot of money that goes in there. But just because it sort of suits the political sympathies of his side, they're trying to kowtow to these folks that are seizing college campuses. And this is a speech that he recently gave. This is why we're in such a bad space. We've got someone who has absolutely no ability to command any audience. He's completely confused. Imagine allowing an old man to get up and give this speech and then remember that this is the president of the United States, the oldest man to hold that office. He's proven it every single day that he has no business running for re-election. It leads to that point where we have to ask, if this dude is able to run for office, why can he not be prosecuted for having the classified documents? And if he's not, and it certainly appears that he's not, but just watch this video, then what on earth are they doing?
And I had a terrible headache. Excuse me, a terrible headache. And sorry. swallowed wrong.
Swallowed wrong. This dude's sitting up there he's barely conscious. He might need an ambulance looking at that. He should be transported to the nearest hospital and evaluated. And instead, he's given speeches and supposedly in charge of this whole country. Wild. Biden administration, per Ryan Saavedra, published yesterday over on Daily Wire as well, says President Joe Biden is repeatedly considering bringing Palestinians into the United States as refugees as he looks to assuage the anger he faces from anti-Semites within his own party who are angry about his administration's support for Israel in the war against Hamas. This is a very, very, very long and sort of slow brewing problem. But that anti-Semitic piece of the political left, isn't it wild? Don't you guys remember Donald Trump was a Nazi? Do you recall all of those? Donald Trump was a Nazi. He's a fascist. He's an authoritarian. He's the next Hitler. And then you literally have members of the sort of leftist caucus, the leftist voting bloc that are blocking Jews from going to school. Like, irony is calling right now in 2024. How many people had that on their bingo card? Like actual Nazi type behavior going down. Of course, most of us probably could have seen this because they tolerate insanity and they tolerate an incredible amount of cognitive dissonance. You're going to call Donald Trump the Nazi, and then you're going to actually allow actual Nazi type behaviors. It's amazing. And you've got unhinged people on the political left who are out there doing the propaganda work, talking about exactly this. You know, who's a bigger threat to quote unquote democracy? By the way, I want to actually adopt the term democracy because that's what this lady reminds me of. This is Nicole Wallace over on CNN talking about how if we elect Donald Trump, who, by the way, was already president for 4 years and none of the things she talked about happened. But if we elect him this time, whoosh, it's all over. We literally have done this before. This is 2016. This is 2020 all over again. I don't know why they think this stuff resonates, but there must be ratings in it. Not a lot based on what we're seeing. But here she is making this insane story that the free press will be over, despite the fact that she's still doing her job. And that job has existed all the way through the Donald Trump presidency. In fact, 2017 to 2020 was kind of a boon time for CNN, for people to come and get their democracy fixes. Anyway, this is referencing the toast that was given at the White House Correspondents' Meeting.
I've seen that toast a bunch of times, but it landed very differently this year because depending on what happens in November, 7 months from right now, this time next year, I might not be sitting here. There might not be a White House Correspondents' Dinner or a free press. While our democracy wouldn't exactly fall apart immediately without it, the real threat looms larger. A candidate with outward disdain, not just for a free press, but for all of our freedoms and for the rule of law itself.
That's really hard to watch and stomach because it feels like she must know that that's complete garbage, that it's completely made up. And interestingly, crying about sort of the type of fake news that we heard Donald Trump talk about. Look at this. It's a little opinion piece coming out over on New York Post. Biden's crying fake news so loudly you'd think that he was Trump. Of course, a little jab there because the constant drumbeat is that Donald Trump was always saying the media was fake. That lady was fake. What you just heard was completely fake. Meanwhile, this is Biden. His whole shtick right now is that it's not that everything's bad. It's that the media is lying and claiming it's bad. It's almost the exact opposite of what was going on, where people were claiming things were bad when they were pretty decent under Donald Trump. It's like a complete upside down. We're living in an upside down. We're looking through a mirror universe that makes no sense. The claim is that he says he's getting negative press about his failed presidency. It's fake news, and he's whining about not getting the positive coverage he claims that he deserves. You know what this reminds me of in a big way? And I hate to make this always about what my ex-girlfriend does, but the FBI doesn't like it when we were putting out information that was factually accurate, but it was negative in its coverage or its lean towards them. And they said that they thought they had a right to tell the press how to cover a story. They believed that they were entitled to have the entirety of their statements run. The fact of the matter is the free press doesn't have to run anything. They can ask you for a statement and they can use it or not. If they want to be fair and balanced, they have that right. If they want to have an opinion piece like this one, they're allowed to do that as well. Biden administration doesn't like it. So he's screaming about fake news. He says, I'm sincerely asking you, I'm sincerely not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to rise up to the seriousness of the moment. In the age of disinformation, credible information that people can trust is more important than ever. Yeah, we agree. That's why people want to hear voices that are not from these mainstream media outlets that are sort of co-opted to give political talking points. And that makes you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I know whenever he gives these caveats, these garbage like political ones, no joke, not a lie. I mean it. Not hyperbole. All this crap, right? Makes you more important than ever. Well, the White House Correspondents' Dinner has for a long time been a fluff job. It's the circle jerk that exists in Washington, where the White House goes in and pays homage to the people that cover them and make sure that they feel like they have special access and that they're extra special friends of the regime, and therefore they get positive coverage. The problem is that even the polling data, even from places like CNN, are not favorable to this guy. So as he's leaving, someone said, what's your outlook on the economy next year? And he said, all good. Take a look. Start reporting it the right way. Now, that's not a violation of the First Amendment for someone to encourage someone to do favorable coverage. But it is kind of dropping the veil a little bit, isn't it? Doesn't it kind of show us that he is advocating coverage that slants his way? Usually we would call that propaganda. We played this yesterday, but I want to play it one more time. This is Karine Jean-Pierre. She's trying to coax these people who sit in that press room that get briefed by her all the time and often lied to. She's trying to get them on board. Can you just be nice to our guy? We know he's 1,000 years old. We know that things are crap out there. But could you say they're not crap? Could you just help these people debunk their own experience of prices and inflation and housing and all the other things we talked about, the sort of disruption of the American dream? Can you just give them some propaganda for us? That's all we're asking. It's not a lot. Just lie to people. You guys have been doing it for a long time. I'm going to show you another interesting thing. Zero Hedge had a great article out that I think tells you just how sad this administration is when it comes to trying to get the real, actual news covered in a fake way. Let's do Sideshow Bob first, though.
Is the president frustrated that despite the fact that he continues to say what he has done, that some Americans are not feeling the impact of his policies?
Look, we have seen some consumer confidence go up over the past couple of months, and I think that's important to note. And so that is out there. That data is out there. Look, we're talking about a president who understands what it feels like to sit around your kitchen table and have to make difficult decisions.
Which difficult decisions are those, Jean-Pierre? Which ones is Joe Biden making? Which country to take a bag of money from to send his crackhead son to? Is that whether it's shower time? How many people he's going to invite to the White House to sniff? Like what are the difficult decisions that are being made around the Biden household? Is it Jill's outfit choice? Which 80s couch she's going to dress like on any given day? Like, I don't get it. The dude's a multimillionaire from being in politics from the age of 29. He's now 81 years old. Has his son ever had a real job? Does that family have a real business? What difficult decisions is the Biden administration sitting around the kitchen table and trying to figure out, other than we've got to figure out how to keep this guy standing upright and functional in some nominal way for the next few months so that we can get, President Kamala and have the mamala of the country, a woman who's not a mother, at least not biologically, right? And she's going to have to be pushed out like she's some sort of savior and some feminine figure. They suddenly know what a woman is whenever it comes down to one of their people. This story I found to be very interesting. It's coming from Zero Hedge, which is kind of like a sort of a alternative news site if you want to go out there and find this. But this one is very fun. First of all, it has a provocative photo, so that's fun. This is an article entitled "Do Not Disclose This Is an Ad." An OnlyFans creator, that means a pornographer, a girl doing porn, working for herself, I suppose, says that the Biden administration paid for full-on political propaganda. OnlyFans creator and TikTok star Farah Khalidi says that the Biden administration paid her to push full-on political propaganda and then asked her not to disclose that she was advertising for them. There's all these questions that surround the ethics of this sort of work. You'll notice that political ads tend to say they have to say who they are paid for by. I don't know how that works in the political influencer sphere. No one's ever asked me to shill for their politics, thankfully, so I don't have to tell them no. But this woman speaking to a political commentator says she was asked to boast about Ketanji Brown Jackson. I thought it was Jackson Brown. I like Jackson Brown better because there's a band, right? After Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Biden, I was doing full-on political propaganda. The funny thing is they're like, do not disclose this as an ad because technically it's not a product, so you don't have to disclose that it's an ad. It is a product if you're trying to push political messaging. I suppose if it's just influence campaigns, then it's just like what propaganda has always been. And if you're listening to what pornographers have to say and their takes on how great the country are, I guess you're already a moron, so there's that. If you want some girl with oversized glasses, fake breasts, and a medium pretty face, that's where you get your news from. It turns out a lot of children, young people who are of the age of majority now, AOC calls them kids, these 18 and plus, but a lot of them are getting their quote unquote news. They're not getting news. They're getting information from TikTok. She said, because I think they just wanted some sort of edgy girl of color to tell people when they nominated Ketanji Brown Jackson, they're like, hey, can you say as a person of color, you feel reflected? So this young pornographic actress is reflected in the person of Ketanji Jackson Brown. I mean, they probably both know the same amount about guns and some of the other court cases that she's been asked to decide. So there's that, isn't it? I just find it interesting. What an interesting choice. And then the piece that actually hit home with me as I read a little bit further down into this article is that Steven Spielberg has also agreed to help with the re-election campaign. They're straight up hiring filmmakers to choreograph something because the merits and the capabilities. This is the same as doing the NBC producer to do the January 6th committee, is it not? They're going out and they're saying, how will this present in the mass media? How do we sell this message to people? Don't worry about the facts. Don't worry about the actual value of the information. What if we curated it in such a way that it felt true and impactful? And so Steven Spielberg is going to help cover the DNC this year in Chicago, which is August 19th to 22nd. That seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. Chicago in the summer is kind of a war zone. Even if it's not around the convention center, it might be. It might get real weird and spicy. We've already seen what's going on in other Democrat strongholds. Los Angeles, Austin, New York. I don't know. Maybe they're going to need a filmmaker there because it's going to be that good. Hopefully they've got some on the ground units that can run around and give us some real hard-hitting coverage, like Mark Naughton style, get embedded. It's very weird to me that this is the push. In any case, if you don't want propaganda and you don't want to have pornographers, who, by the way, isn't it interesting? She's more ashamed of doing full-on propaganda work and she's sort of admitting to it than she is about doing porn. She's sort of okay with the porn piece. She's not apologizing for that. She's sort of just embarrassed about having to do political propaganda and getting paid for it. Yikes. I wonder what that paycheck looks like, by the way. It's worth asking. In any case, if you guys want non-propaganda, you can go to catholicvote.org and get the loop. Again, it's catholicvote.org. That'll take you to the homepage. All you got to do is type in your email address and your zip code and click loop me in, and you'll get non-propaganda from non-porn stars, which is kind of a nice touch in the modern era, I suppose. If you want to get something that's of value and if you want to follow a more wholesome social media channel, you can go to Catholic Vote. It's at Catholic Vote on Instagram and on X and on, what's the other ones? True Social, etc. Facebook. And they're also on YouTube. If you guys want to check out our new podcast that we're doing once a week with them, it's a sort of a short, condensed, actual produced. There's music, there's some cuts and stuff like that. It's not just me sitting behind the microphone. We've got production value added to it, but it's short and it's easy. And it's bringing home some like valuable messaging, I think, looking at kind of a zoomed out view of what's going on in America. And it's called Between the Lines. You guys can check that out by going to youtube.com/@Catholic Vote, or you can do on Rumble. It's the Catholic Vote channel there. The links are actually in the show descriptions. If you're on Rumble, you can find the Rumble channel. If you're over watching us on YouTube, you can find the links in the YouTube show notes as well. So just letting you all know, all good to go there if you guys want to see a little bit more of it. And we're not done. We're not done because we're going to get right into the most fun part of today's show, which is to say the lesbian Marxists have demands and they have some hot takes on what should be happening on college campuses. This is a Columbia PhD student accusing school administrators of wanting, quote, students to die. of dehydration and starvation in the occupied campus buildings. This is all said and done at this point. This happened yesterday. It's still fun to show it. And then I'll show you what happens when the NYPD gets sick of it. You cannot make this thing up. This woman's name is Johanna King Slutsky. I didn't make that up. That's her name. There is her background. She has research interests in romanticism. I guess that's okay. Literary type. She's also interested in transcendentalism, but also Marxism. And also eco-criticism, 18th and 19th century poetics. She's a grad student in the College of English and Comparative Literature. And this is the best biography. If you guys can't read the small print, it says, my dissertation is on the fantasies of limitless energy in the transatlantic romantic imagination from 1760 to 1860, and my goal is to write a prehistory of metabolic rift, Marxist term for the disruption of energy circuits caused by the industrialization under capitalism. You can imagine that she probably has a lot of job offers coming in based on her capabilities of public speaking. So let's just get her take on what was being demanded, not asked for, by the way, demanded by those students that had holed up in a building on Columbia University's campus. There's nothing better than having someone explain to you that we just want basic humanitarian aid, okay? Lady, you're in the United States, just saying. You can walk out at any time.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building, now would you please bring us food and water?
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food?
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it violently.
Did you guys catch all that? We've voluntarily taken over something that does not belong to us. We want to be there, but we also want to have all of the conveniences. We want pizza. We want some non-GMO, gluten-free cereals, please. And we don't want to die of dehydration. And we can't just be using the water fountains that are in every single college campus building that I've ever been in. And I've been in a lot of college campuses. I used to have to go tour around them when I was an FBI agent and go do defensive briefings for people. They're always water fountains. One of you on Twitter pointed that out the other day, that there were water fountains, and I awarded you a medal for saving all those lives. And I think that's what we should do. Can we just say how funny it is that the final statement there, they're like, wait a minute, the university is not allowing food and water to come into the building. And she was like, well, we're looking for a commitment from the administration that they won't block it. So you're looking for a commitment for something that hasn't happened because you just made it up? This gets to the root of the fantasy, which is why she's probably a literature person and not a student of philosophy, understanding basic logic, or a scientific student of some kind. She's not a grad student in any of the hard sciences where you actually have to have evidence. No, she has feelings. Darn it. And isn't it interesting? She's wearing the Palestinian shemagh thing, right? She's backing this cause. And yet she identifies, if you look at the what the post-millennial claims, let's put this back up on the screen here. Post-millennial. This is Libby Emmons reporting on it. Says that she identifies as both a lesbian and she's attended pride events, which there are pictures on her social media, and a Marxist, which we just read from her piece there. She says that she's been a campus activist since at least 2021, and she was also a member of the Student Workers of Columbia. Student Workers of Columbia has that kind of ring to it, doesn't it? Kind of like a commie, kind of like a Marxist thing. We got a little video from Democracy Now, which is a fun thing. I think it's on PBS. I'm going to go ahead and play this. This is King Slutsky. By the way, Can we please make that name stick around? Can everybody who does this crazy stuff be referred to as a King Slutsky? She's a great example, but you couldn't have made this name up better. This is like bad Hollywood writing that King Slutsky is in charge of the Marxists on campus that are also aligned with the Palestinians for some reason. Isn't it? It's just because all the political left just runs together. They actually have no cause. Their cause is Marxism. Here we go. She's going to tell you what her cause is.
In English and comparative literature at Columbia University, rank and file member of Student Workers of Columbia. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Johanna, let's begin with you. This is now the largest strike in the United States that's going on right now. Can you tell us why you're striking? It's not actually the first strike by the Columbia students this year.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for having me on this program. So this is our second strike this year. We struck last spring as well. And we have really basic demands. Our priority contract articles are, as Jack mentioned in the speech that you all just heard, a raise so that we meet cost of living standards. We have a lower, income compared to cost of living than any peer institution. We're also asking for health care that includes vision and dental benefits. We're asking for protections against sexual harassment and discrimination. And we're asking for full unit recognition for any member who the National Labor Relations Board said should be able to join. The university's been trying to keep out some of our legal members. And we're really motivated, as Professor Halberstam said in the speech you guys heard. We really see ourselves as part of a broader labor movement, both in higher education, which has been, facing terrible trends of adjunctification and administrative overreach, and in the in the labor movement overall.
In the labor movement overall, which is to say that she's a communist, right? You're allowed to have that opinion in America, it turns out. You're allowed to be a communist. You're allowed to advocate for all your bad ideas. What you're not allowed to do is make demands on other people because you have no right to do so. And you have no right to go take buildings that don't belong to you. If you want to get a permit to hang out in the street and block traffic and the city allows it, then you can do that sort of thing. But if you violate the law and the right-of-way rules that exist, then you should probably have to deal with the consequences of that. We're supposed to have some order. They don't care about order. They don't care about Palestine. They don't care about Black Lives Mattering. What they care about is, can they move their radical agenda forward? And she just told you what it was. She is the epitome of privilege. She outlined the fact that they're calling it an Ivy League school. I don't know if Columbia falls in the Ivy League technically or not. It's irrelevant. She sees herself as a coastal elite. She sees herself as someone who should get medical and dental benefits as a student who is a half-assed teacher of comparative literature and romanticism in the 1760s to the 1860s. What on earth are you talking about? That's the most privileged life there is. She's getting paid to be a crappy undergraduate teaching instructor, teaching literature to people and indoctrinating them into her bullshit socialism. This is the problem with these folks. It's a problem that's been identified for quite a long time. And we'll go back into a little bit of history to be able to most properly address this statement. Here it is.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything. Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
They know so much that isn't so. Ronald Reagan said it. It always echoes in my head, kind of like the Axel Foley theme, which also I can't get out of my head. Whenever I see these people making claims, that's where I go. The things that she knows to be true are not true. She had a choice. She went there on her free will. You don't get to go there and then make demands. You traded your services. If you don't like the deal, go somewhere else. And I think it has a really important problem because we actually do have to back their free speech. We don't have to back their illicit behaviors. This comes up in this little article here that I found. This goes back to 2012. This predates my time in the FBI, but this is an issue that I saw while I was working for the Bureau as we did surveillance on people that were engaging in what should have otherwise been protected speech. And then also this very nebulous term that the government uses to go after people that's called material support of terrorism. They're also very interested in how they use it. They mostly go after jihadis. This set of protests will be problematic. I want to bring this thing up. It's politics and terrorism. What happens when money is speech? This is in the wake of Citizens United, essentially a court decision, a 5-4 court decision from the Supreme Court that allowed people to give unlimited monies in the political sphere because their money constituted First Amendment protected liberties. This woman, Deborah Hellman, who is writing on behalf of the Virginia Law Review, has a little brief. It's only a couple of pages in one of their articles, but it touches on this fundamental issue that if money is speech and you are allowed to give speech, what happens when you want to give money to groups that the United States State Department has determined are terrorist organizations? Because then you can go to jail for it. And I'm going to actually take it a step further because there's another piece in here that is really problematic. There is a whole number real world propaganda value. We talked about propaganda. There is a propaganda value to groups like Hamas or ISIS or Al Qaeda or Al Shabaab, or you take your pick of terrorist organizations that we can all agree are terrorists. There's a whole number propaganda value for an American to support their cause. They would do a lot to get Americans, particularly Americans of note or people that can stand in front of a microphone and speak articulately in favor of their cause. There is a value in dollars that you could attribute to the propaganda that they're doing. So your speech now has a monetary value. And we know that you're allowed to speak in favor of these things. And that speech is of value to these organizations. How is that not some material support? There's a really dangerous line there. We are in conflict in this country when it comes to decisions that have been made, because you can't give money, but money is speech. If money is speech, why can you not give your money and your speech in favor? And if you cannot give money and your speech has value, then how could you give speech in favor of it? It's a line for First Amendment absolutists like me that says, I'm not 100% sure that we shouldn't be able to give this money. It's a conflict that we should have. The other thing is that I also think these people are idiots. So as long as they're just giving money, the minute it gets used for actual terrorist activities, if they're actually funding attacks on the United States, then we have this other problem. Anyway, we're not consistent as a country. I don't know the solution to this. I know that this is a problem. And I want you to know that it's out there. You should have that dissonance because it's hard for us to rectify this particular idea if we are being fair. And that's what our goal should be. You should be able to support fill-in-the-blank crappy causes, whether they be socialists or communists or BLM or Antifa or any of those. The minute you cross the line has to be in the legal sphere. It has to infringe on other people's liberties. And I'm not 100% confident that giving money to support causes is that. But the minute that those causes come after us, then obviously you're a part of the problem. It's not easy to rectify. Maybe that's the terrible headache that Joe Biden had when he was giving his speech. Maybe he was worried about this. Is that possible? That he's just thinking deeply? Meanwhile, they've got a couple problems with the so-called women of color. We talked about a girl doing propaganda and pornography. There's another problem that's kind of flowing out there. Before we do that, let me say thanks to the affiliates that we have that kind of keep this program rolling as well. You guys can go and get yourself a high-quality protein snack that will also help your headaches if you have one. Matt@jerky.com/Kyle is the website. It's Matt with 2 T's, hat with 1 T's, jerky.com/Kyle. By the way, they have a taste, love it or your money back guarantee. That's pretty cool. There's not a lot of people that'll stand behind their product that way. I'm sure they will do it. Matt seems like a really good kid. We actually got an interview. I'll probably cut up some pieces of it. If you guys want to get into the USDA Prime cuts, those are my favorite. Those are the 6 best flavors, I think. Most tender, most high quality beef. And you guys can save 20% using the promo code Kyle. You'll get 20% off. 1/5 of the price will be knocked off with promo code KYLE. And then if you guys want to set up a reoccurring delivery, once you figure out what it is you like, you can set up a subscription and you'll get that discount as well. And then our other friends over at mypillow.com/Kyle. That's going to be Mike Lindell's website. I'm still waiting. We'll see. I took the slow boat to China with theirs. A slow boat from Minneapolis, I guess. They do free shipping and it's 10 to 14 days. So we'll see how long that took. But if you guys want to get up to 50% off using promo code KYLE, you can get a deal on the towels. I'm not a towels guy. I'm a bath sheet guy. I want a towel that's basically the size of a rug. And that's what I ordered up. So we'll see what they're all about. mypillow.com/Kyle. If you guys want to get in your own, if you're in the bedding market and you need to upgrade your stuff, by all means. Or if you're like a creeper, like what did Steve call them? Drop sheets and drop towels. If you're gross. Maybe the OnlyFans people need to go there. They could go mypillow.com/Kyle and get themselves squared away. We're not encouraging people to do OnlyFans. I'm just saying if you're in that market. That's terrible. Okay, speaking of cackles and weird laughter, how about this lady? Kamala Harris. Oh, she's going to go to Florida and she's going to try to stop the 6-week abortion ban that goes into effect, even though we have a 10th Amendment that says the federal government doesn't have any say in this. What's interesting in this article, this is coming from ABC, and one of the things that I found to be most interesting was a quote from Joe Biden. You remember when if you disagreed with an election, then you're somehow problematic? And if you don't like the way the Supreme Court rules, then you're a problem? That's only if you're on the political right. If you think that the Supreme Court gets things wrong ever, you're totally cool if you're on the left. Direct quote from Joe Biden out of this article. He, speaking about Trump, is wrong. The Supreme Court was wrong. It should be a constitutional right in the federal Constitution, a federal right, and it shouldn't matter where in America you live. This is about women's rights. Well, you know what they say about using the word should? It doesn't have any reality on what's going on. There isn't a federal right to abortion. That's actually what the Dobbs decision was. It said that this should be left to the states. It's not covered by the U.S. Constitution. There is no inherent right to abortion and killing your babies. And so Florida, well within its rights, has decided that they're going to cut the time that you can get an abortion in that state back to 6 weeks. That means it needs to be immediate. That basically is morning after pills for most people. There's always going to be carve-outs for medical procedures to save the life of the mother, which they will be disingenuous about. What Kamala Harris is going to do in this space, I have zero idea. And neither do you. The upside is that since she's not very good at solving problems that she's been assigned to, AI is still going to kill us, right? She's the AI czar. The border is still wildly open. She solved that problem, not at all. She was going to go find out the underlying causes. Do you recall? Yeah, not so much. So I don't expect there to be any situation where we're going to have Kamala Harris go out there and stop access to abortion in Florida the way that she thinks she is, or make more access to it, because she has no power. She also has no sense. She's the mamala with no kids. Pretty weird. Biden obviously is trying to campaign on this so they can flip Florida. I just don't think that a bunch of old folks in Florida and a bunch of people who have voted overwhelmingly for Ron DeSantis and generally speaking have controlled that state in a dark, dark red way are going to be interested what this weirdo lady on the screen has to say about their abortion laws. Like they're passing aggressive protections of children in schools. It's the home for Moms for Liberty, which is against some of the pornography in school libraries. I don't think they got any power down there. This is the devil yelling loudly, as Mark Hout talked about, that when the devil is least capable, he is also the loudest. I think that's the case. That's why you send Cackles McGee down there to go talk to folks in Florida about their very, very bad law that's so mean to women, allegedly. So, you want to get into weird things? We talked about Mark Hout for 1 second. It was on accident, but there it is. This is an interesting piece, and this is covered by my friends over at Catholic Vote Today. It's also in the Daily Signal, which is Heritage Foundation's newsletter. Yeah, DOJ's Kristen Clark, she's the one in charge of the Civil Rights Division, testified that she was never arrested, but court records and text message indicate she was. I think this is a broader problem. Kristen Clark is the one who actually initiated the prosecution of Mark Hout for his standing and defending his son in front of an abortion clinic in Philadelphia. You've seen the interviews. If you watch our channel, you can obviously go back and watch them if you so choose and see what he has to say. Big fan of Mark Hout. This is an interesting blow because this woman, who was confirmed by the Senate May 25th of 2021 to lead the Civil Rights Division, lied, it appears, based on the records they have. Senator Tom Cotton was the one who was asking her in the confirmation hearing, quote, since becoming a legal adult, by the way, we have a real problem with that number in our country, but that's 18 in this country. Since becoming a legal adult, have you ever been arrested for or accused of committing a violent crime against another person? She responded with no. She was under oath. The records maintained and obtained by the Daily Signal indicate that she may have been less than forthcoming. That's a nice way of saying that she lied. What do you deal with that? How do you deal with somebody that lied about being arrested and is now confirmed to the DOJ? I'm not confident that you could find yourself in a position, even as like an FBI agent, like I was, with a lie like that on record. They asked me if I'd ever been arrested, and the answer for me was yes. I had been arrested when I was in the Air Force. It didn't go anywhere. It was a BS arrest. It resulted in a it resulted in a letter of reprimand and a letter of commendation on the same day because I shamed the guy who was writing it because he was a moron. And I mean that like clinically. I think he was a clinical moron. I think he had been hit in the head so hard that he was no longer functional. But this is the actual story behind this. Clark's ex-husband, a guy named Reginald Avery, alleged to the American Accountability Foundation in 2021 that Clark had attacked him with a knife, deeply slicing his finger to the bone on the night of July 4th, 2006, while they were married and living in Maryland. That was a long time ago, but she would have been an adult. And she hacked up her husband with a knife? Do you know how many times most people have done that in their life? Like, it's very rare that people do knife attacks. How many of you are married and just accidentally one night just cut your husband down to the bone in an aggressive way? That's pretty wild. And she was arrested for it and then was expunged. Even expunged, dismissed, or otherwise ignored charges, a mistrial, if it would, those are still real arrests. That's a real arrest. That's when somebody comes in and says, you are not free to leave. You are now in handcuffs and you are being transported away from here. The criminal process was dismissed without a trial. There's paperwork here on this story showing that there was a request and an order for expungement of police and court records, but expunging them doesn't mean they don't show up on a criminal background check. And here's the real problem. The FBI does background checks on everybody that is nominated to a federal position like this. I've done them. You go and you interview people. You go out and knock on doors. They have to name references, don't they? They do. You go find out who knew them in these various places. Has anything ever happened there? You have to pull their NCIC report, which says whether or not they've ever been arrested. And this stuff shows up, even if the charges are dismissed, which tells us that the FBI likely had this information and then also knew that she probably perjured herself on that day. This seems real problematic. I don't see that in the article. Even if Maryland law doesn't require you to disclose it, federal law does. That's how background checks work. Why is this okay? This is the lead person for the Civil Rights Division who doesn't believe in honesty. It tells you a lot about this administration, the kind of people that they're willing to put in front of it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever get a job again. It means that why do you think that you can lie with impunity and then run a place that is that is legitimately referred to as the crown jewel of the DOJ, the Civil Rights Division? That was what Eric Holder called it. Oh. You don't even have to be honest when you go run that thing? And you wonder why we're talking about weaponized government. The last little thing here, this is another sort of push against the 10th Amendment. And this is also coming from Catholic Vote. I think I've got a picture of that. Yeah, there we go. Head to head, not just about abortion in Florida, but we've got a number of red states that are rejecting this new Title IX decision ruling defining sex to include gender identity. The Biden administration is essentially trying to erase the concept of women. That's not surprising based on putting people like Ketanji Jackson Brown on the Supreme Court who couldn't describe what a woman was. She's not a biologist, right? They are now trying to summarily increase the scope of what the word sex means in Title IX legislation that goes way, way back before anybody had any concept of this weirdness. And they want to include gender identity so they can essentially wipe out and allow men, biological men, to participate in women's sports. I don't see that being something that is a part of the Constitution. I've read it. Many of you have as well. It's not that long. I recommend it. The 10th Amendment should say that this is a states' rights issue. The states can define that stuff however they want. But as we keep seeing with the administrative state and the way that the Administrative Procedures Act allows these organizations to run, what you are seeing is rules, and this one under the United States Education Department, which has no business existing, having read the Constitution and that not being in the purview of the federal government. These rules tend to be very threatening to state sovereignties, which are supposed to exist. And what they do is they don't need a law. They just reinterpret the existing law with what they call administrative rules. This is the reason why people are defined as gun dealers by the ATF. That makes many of us criminals if we want to just sell a gun to a friend. Even if you make money on it, that shouldn't have anything to do with it. Sometimes assets appreciate in value. Federal government getting involved in stuff that is far too big. It is the biggest hammer. It should be left for only the biggest issues. And instead, they're trying to hit tiny little things like whether or not some school decides to let boys and girls compete in the same types of athletic events. Not normal, not okay, but it is the world we're living in. It is the way that things are going down right now. I wanted to show you guys this the final end on how that lady, the King Slutsky's revolution happened. This is what happens when the Utes don't get their way. You know what? Before we do that, the Utes, I love the Utes. I don't know why I downloaded this clip, but like I was thinking about it. I'm like, the Utes are not okay. You guys know what the Utes are? Let's explain what the Utes are. Some of you have questions.
Is it possible the two Utes?
Two what? What was that word?
What word?
To what?
What?
Did you say Utes?
Yeah, two Utes.
What is a Ute?
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor. Two youths.
Oh, now you guys know. This is what happens when the Utes get out of control and the NYPD decides they've had enough of the Utes taking over buildings that don't belong to them. It did end nicely. Everybody wins in the end, which is to say commies were thrown downstairs and they dramatically rolled down. I think some of these people were actually theater majors in addition to other useless majors, comparative literature, and then this. So get a little take. We're not going to show the entire clip. This is coming from freedomnews.tv. And give him a little bit of credit for this, but watch the theatrical roll down the stairs, and then watch the guy that's dead on the ground, but suddenly he's not dead. I like this. I love people acting like they're living their own FIFA soccer fantasies. What are they doing? They're throwing all your crap down the stairs because you guys took a bunch of park benches and you blocked the doors to a building that you don't own, you idiots. Anyway, nothing like the sound of commies getting tossed around and having to remember that they live in a country full of laws. Even if they hate it, they can always go. You know, there's something that Garrett O'Boyle pointed out the other day that I thought was really important. All these kids that want to support Palestine, the free Palestine types, they're making all these demands. Isn't it weird that they could so easily just fly there and get involved in the conflict? How many of you enlisted at the age of like 18, 19, 20 years old, went out there and served the causes that you thought were valuable, this country? Garrett was telling me, I was in Afghanistan. I believed in what I was standing for, and I went out there and went, yeah, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to get into the kinetic actions. I'm going to back up, put my money and my body where my mouth is, and I'm going to go support the cause. It shouldn't be that much. It shouldn't be that hard to do it. All right, I got a real palate cleanser for you. I know that was good. Nothing like seeing weirdo commies in a libtard school getting tossed down by the NYPD. But that's not where we're going to end here. We're going to end with a little silly thing. You guys may know this. I trained to be an air traffic controller when I was in the Air Force, so it is a skill set that is kind of near and dear to my heart. Air traffic controllers are kind of a funny breed of people, and the way that you learn how to speak is very strange. The more that you sort of get away from the .65 required phraseology is what they call it, and they test you on how to do it exactly right, then people start getting kind of have their own style. This is a guy driving down the highway who's still doing his job as an air traffic controller, but he's given some instructions to those around you. How many of us wish that people could actually have real traffic control on our highways when you see all the idiots driving? This is just kind of a fun little video to watch.
Gray F-150 Mazda Tower, go ahead and make your right-hand lane change and follow the gray Jeep in front of you. Red Honda, I need you to keep the speed up, please. Your speed is currently 62 in the left lane. You need to be above 68 miles an hour or be passing a vehicle. Blue Jeep, I see you getting on the freeway now. Go ahead and start your left-hand turn and get behind the Ford F-150 in front of you. All right, who's the white Scion sitting in the left lane going 50 miles an hour? This is a freeway. There's no one in front of you. You need to get over to the right-hand side and then proceed up to 60 miles an hour. All right, the white Ford Bronco getting on the freeway. I don't know why in the heck you chose white, but go ahead and get on the freeway here. And I'm going to have you make a left turn and follow the gray Ford minivan in front of you. All right. There's a white BMW. We like to see it. Go ahead and proceed direct to your destination, sir, and we'll go ahead and get everyone out of your way for you.
I don't know why that makes me happy. That's just a little bit of nothing out there in the world for you guys. Some people still have a sense of humor, even though things are stupid. So at least we've got that going in our favor. We're going to wrap the show up today. I want to make sure you guys know that you can support my friend Garrett O'Boyle. We did suspend our campaign over on Give, Send, Go, which has been there for way too long. And some of you continue to give to it. We really appreciate that. But if you want to support the O'Boyle family, go there to the-suspendables.com. It is the-suspendables.com. The promo code Kyle will save you 10% on any of our merch. That's going to be our shirts like I'm wearing right now. This is the Are You Suspendable shirt with the white badge. You can get one that is like this one. Is it this side? There it is. This side over here, which is... the Last Line Substack logo. It's the AR with the plume. You'll get a lot of comments on that if you wear that in public. People appreciate that. And then also the Last Line Strength, all available on the-suspendables.com. You can still pick up the pins and a couple of other things, but support them there. Get something for your money. That goes directly. It also keeps Garrett out of trouble. Keeps him from doing other things that are less productive, like being angry or calling me and being frustrated and us just hating on members of Congress for not doing anything. The-suspendables.com, promo code Kyle. Check in there if you guys are interested in supporting our friends. And let's go to a 5-star review. We've got one right here. Actually, these are coming from Spotify. Again, I wanted to make sure we put them on there. Let our Spotify listeners know that we are checking in on you. This is from 11 days ago, or maybe a little bit longer now. Kyle Brooks saying, for taking linguistic grounds, you could also consider the 2016 election and the Hillary Clinton attempt to dictate or control the words being used to describe her. 100% true. Listen, the issues with First Amendment speech is that we have to be able to speak and we have to be able to express ourselves. It's interesting when people start weighing in on it. Like I said, I wanted you guys to have another take on money and terrorism and material support of terrorism, because that is another kind of topic that we should start mentally exploring it. And we don't necessarily have to have the answer. We just have to know that there are questions about it. Also from Tony saying, I've absolutely been loving your content since the day you started this podcast. Thank you so much for every word you say. Every word, Tony? That seems like a lot of words. I do appreciate the compliment, and we'll keep doing it here. Guys, make sure you are supporting the channel by going and liking it over on Rumble. If you're watching us on other places, you'll see that there is a link in the description to go to the Rumble channel, and make sure you're supporting our sponsors, folks like Catholic Vote, getting into their channel and following them. You'll see some good content there. There's some good conversations. You can also support Patriot Coolers, Mad Hat Jerky, My Pillow, all those folks. I think you'll still be able to go to For Patriots if you like, /Kyle. And we appreciate all of you guys being here. We'll see you again tomorrow. The Wednesday has been weird, at least on my end. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday in the morning tomorrow. Hang in there. The commies get thrown down the stairs in the end.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.